Hello and a very warm welcome to the channel. Now I got another American History Reacts video for you today. So this is the Battle of Gettysburg from the American Battlefield Trust, which I think should be really interesting. I mean, the American Civil War is something I know a little bit about, but honestly not that much. I mean, Gettysburg I mainly know because of the speech. I know it was a great speech, but I don't know much about the battle itself, other than it was one of the most important battles of the Civil War. Because I think it should be really interesting. Very briefly, I try not to bring contemporary politics into this channel, but just if you are Ukrainian or if you're got family in Ukraine or anything, you're 100% in my thoughts. I feel so bad. I know it makes no difference, but I am thinking of you. So without further ado, let's watch the video. American Battlefield Trust presents Gettysburg. Link will of course be in the description for the original video.
June 1863. 200,000 are dead.
Ooh.
And the Civil War is barely half over.
I mean, it's almost impossible to overstate how brutal the American Civil War was. It was the most deadly conflict in American history, both in absolute terms and in per capita terms. I mean, civil wars are often the most deadly in per capita terms. I mean, the most deadly war in English history was the English Civil War, not World War One or World War Two, because obviously both sides' casualties count towards the overall figure, and almost any civilians involved. But yeah, it was a really nasty war by the sound of things.
Now, General Robert E. Lee aims to move the war from Virginia and win a major battle in the North.
So this is something that took me a while to appreciate, is just how close the Confederate and Union capitals were. So of course the Confederate capital was Richmond, Virginia, and the Union capital was DC. And by American standards, they're pretty close together. I mean, by European standards, they're still a fair distance apart. But it always meant that the Union was, I guess, more vulnerable than perhaps it looks, because a relatively small Confederate advance into Union territory could result in the fall of the capital.
He hopes to stoke the fire of a growing peace movement.
Ah, that's interesting.
His 75,000-man army of Northern Virginia.
Okay, so sorry. I did a previous video on the American Civil War, and I mentioned that there's a general called Hooker, and I thought that's like an unfortunate name, poor guy. Anyway, apparently the reason he's called Hooker, a load of you said in the comments, is because it's actually the other way around. So the term was named after him because his army was followed by lots of prostitute camp followers. So I feel really sorry for the guy, but like, you're a famous general and you become best known as another word for prostitute. But yeah, anyway, that amused me.
Virginia moves swiftly into south-central Pennsylvania. Union General George Gordon Meade and his 95,000-strong Army of the Potomac moves toward Lee.
Okay.
Lee concentrates his army where 10 roads converge.
That makes sense.
Gettysburg.
Ah. Oh, so is this a contemporary Civil War picture of Gettysburg? Because if so, that's fascinating. I mean, so I suppose it's kind of like a village, really, sort of grown out of this sort of transportation hub. That's really interesting. It's weird in a sense, like it looks very old-fashioned, but also you could kind of imagine it existing today.
Lee's move north will spark the largest battle in American history. It will last for 3 days.
Oh, I didn't realise that. So and that's very unusual, because I mean, most war battles, of course, finish in a day at most, often a matter of hours. So a 3-day battle is really unusual. I mean, unless you're looking at kind of like World War II battles, which is a bit different. But I mean, I suppose it shows just how nasty it was.
The battle starts west of Gettysburg.
Okay.
Union General John Buford's cavalrymen shoot at lead elements of Confederate General Henry Heath's division before falling back as Heath advances. Buford holds near
I'm presuming they would have been like shooting from horseback. It's not like kind of earlier ages where you had cavalrymen who would dismount and then shoot and then remount. I'm guessing by this period you'd be shooting from horseback.
Gettysburg, until General John Reynolds' First Corps arrives. Infantry against infantry, fighting intensifies on both sides of the Chambersburg pike.
Nasty.
As the highest-ranking Union officer on the field, Major General John Reynolds escalates the battle as he desperately tries to support Buford. While ordering a Wisconsin regiment forward, he is shot in the back of the neck.
Oh, no.
Killed. Just as the battle begins to escalate.
I mean, I'm guessing that like the officers may well have had higher casualties than like the kind of the actual troops, the main troops. I mean, certainly I think in the First World War, the British officers had a higher casualty rate than non-officers. It shows you just how dangerous it was to be in command in the days when commanders were still on the front and not quite a few miles away. I suppose for First World War, we're talking like low-ranking officers, not like the generals. But
Confederate General Robert Rhodes' division arrives on Oak Hill. Though his division is twice the size of his opponent, Rhodes' initial attacks are poorly coordinated and repulsed. Then, General Jubal Early's division arrives from the northeast. Despite Union reinforcements, Rhodes and Early manage to break their right flank.
oh,
The Yankees are fighting a losing battle on the left, too. After a savage firefight in Hurst Woods, they fall back to Seminary Ridge. Cannons and small arms blast the attacking rebels, reinforced by Dorsey Pender's division.
so that's interesting. It sounds like the battle started really well for the Confederates. I'm aware it ended in a Union victory, so clearly something's going to change. But I didn't realise it began with a kind of series of Union setbacks.
But numbers come to bear, and the Union line collapses. Some escape via an unfinished railroad bed. Others are trapped in Gettysburg streets. The defeated Yankees reform on Cemetery Hill, where General Howard has left a brigade and an array of cannons.
Okay.
The Confederates probe, but do not attack.
I don't know if the Union Army actually used that formation, but they look really bunched up. I would much prefer to be the Confederates and kind of all spread out than the Union. I mean, this may just be a kind of metaphor for the army retreating and reforming. We got a little pause.
It was one of the bloodiest days of the war, but the worst was yet to come.
Yeah.
By the afternoon, the Confederates have wrapped around the Union position, which now resembles a giant fishhook.
Okay. Like a defensive
The
position.
rebels occupy the high ground, and General Meade's interior lines will allow him to easily reinforce threatened sectors. In the afternoon, Union General Dan Sickles moves his Third Corps to the Peach Orchard and the Emmitsburg Road, where he thought he could better use his artillery. But this creates a lengthy bulge in the Union line, and Sickles lacks the men to defend it.
Yeah.
General Meade is forced to send his entire Fifth Corps and parts of others to reinforce Sickles, opening gaps.
So it sounds like the battle started really badly for the Union, which is something I hadn't appreciated at all. I mean, first of all, they were forced back, and now they're sort of they got this advance which doesn't make much sense, and they're having to reinforce it to try and stop a collapse. No, it's not going well for the Union.
In his center and on his right. General Lee orders Longstreet to make the main attack upon the Union left. General Hill is to threaten the center, and General Ewell is to assault the Union right. Longstreet's divisions under John Bell Hood and Lafayette McLaws
So the General Hood, I might be wrong about this, but Fort Hood in Texas, which is like a massive American military base, I think that's named after him. Please, if I'm wrong, someone correct me in the comments, because I'm no expert, but I think it is.
line up on Seminary Ridge, along with Richard Anderson's division of Hill's Corps, ready to make the assault. It is one of the hottest days of the year. Advancing under a hail of fire, Hood's brigades commingle and split apart.
Okay.
Some slamming the 3rd Corps troops at Devil's Den, while others assault Little Round Top, where just arrived 5th Corps soldiers await them. Both sides send in reinforcements. Control of Devil's Den changes hands 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Alabama and Texas soldiers charge Little Round Top again and again, but fall back.
So presumably in the American Civil War, soldiers were kind of organised by state. Like, so you'd have a regiment from Maine and then a regiment from, well, obviously Texas on the other side. I mean, presumably that's the main organisation rather than kind of like any other geographical or sort of characteristic, I'm assuming.
At last, a bayonet charge by Maine troops sends the exhausted attackers back for good.
Nasty.
The Union's extreme left flank is secure.
Okay.
Meade scrambles reinforcements from the 2nd and 5th Corps to support Sickles. As McLaws' Confederate division enters the fray, the action shifts toward the Peach Orchard, which falls quickly. The fight for the week.
So it's interesting. I mean, we're quite a way through the battle, or at least a good chunk through. And the Confederates still seem to be very much holding their own, if not slightly on top.
The field nearby is less decisive, changing hands 6 times in some of the battle's bloodiest combat. Hood and McLaws' men push on toward Cemetery Ridge, joined by part of Anderson's division. There, troops that vacated to reinforce Sickles have left a half-mile gap near the Union center.
Ah.
The Union Army can be cut in 2.
That's really dangerous.
Via interior lines save the day. The exhausted rebels are pushed back. Other Confederates renew efforts to capture Little Round Top, entering what comes to be called the Valley of Death. Day 2.
So I'm guessing the Union has an offensive position in this kind of Valley of Death. So when the Confederates attack, it seems the Confederates have been quite aggressive in this battle. When the Confederates attack, they can just mow them down from sort of semi-fixed positions.
Thrown back. The fighting finally ceases on the south end of the battlefield. In what General Longstreet termed the best 3 hours fighting ever done by any troops on any battlefield. More than 14,000 men became.
That's quite the claim. I'm going to be honest, but I'm not disagreeing. It's quite the claim.
Casualties of war, and the battle is far from over. At dusk, General Ewell moves on the Union right. 2 of Jubal Early's brigades sweep toward Cemetery Hill, obscured by the gathering darkness. The Union line is thinly held by battle-weary 11th Corps soldiers. Louisianans and North Carolinians overwhelm them.
So I mean, we're what, 2 days into battle? I'm assuming. And it still seems the Confederates are being the more aggressive party. Oh no, I suppose the Confederates probably had to, because if they were trying to take the war out of Virginia, they had to be the attacking force, and just sort of, assuming they were trying to force their way to DC eventually. So I suppose they had to be the more aggressive of the 2 armies. But it is interesting that they're doing like the vast majority of the attacking at the moment.
Portions of East Cemetery Hill are captured. Meade's army will lose the battle if Cemetery Hill falls.
Guy's getting his head knocked in.
But Union reinforcements surge onto the hill before Confederates can exploit their gains.
Okay.
Early's men are thrown back as General Edward Johnson's division moves to attack Culp's Hill.
So this is the right flank.
Most of the breastworks on Culp's Hill are empty. Their brigades sent to reinforce Sickles. Only 1,300 Union soldiers under General George Sears Greene remain to face Johnson's attacking 4,500.
So that's what, more than 3 to 1.
Greene's men hold firm against numerous nighttime assaults, but some of Johnson's men gain a foothold in the abandoned trenches on the lower hill. By 10 p.m., the day's fighting comes to a halt. The past 2 days have borne 37,000 casualties. By now,
I mean, like,
Gettysburg.
I know it's a small point. It applies to lots of different wars, especially in the kind of the musket age or the rifle age. But the sheer bravery to advance like in a line, with you and hundreds or thousands of other guys towards an enemy who are entrenched and have guns. And people are falling down left, right, and centre, and you just have to carry on advancing, carry on shooting. I mean the sheer bravery is incredible. I mean, I'd be absolutely terrified.
Is the bloodiest battle of the war, and another day of horrible combat is yet to come.
Oh, so even after 2 days, it was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. And we're not even finished yet. That's horrific. So I guess we're going to day 3 now.
General Lee sees an opportunity, hoping to take Culp's Hill in a morning assault. He adds 3 brigades to bolster his left, but General Meade has ordered the return of the 5 brigades that left Culp's Hill to aid Sickles.
Okay.
Bolstered by a stream of reinforcements. Lee is badly outnumbered.
So that's interesting. So it's the Union getting reinforcements from like troops who are already on the battlefield, or from troops who are coming on the battlefield from like elsewhere in the Union. Because I guess because the Union's fighting like a defensive fight, that they might have more access to reinforcements than the Confederates.
For 7 hours, the battle rages. Initial Union attacks are stymied, including an ill-fated move near Spangler's Spring.
Oh.
But by 11 a.m., the Union numbers weigh too heavily, and the Confederates are forced out of their captured entrenchments.
So that's a big win for the Union then. And not only do they push the Confederates back, but they push them back from like a semi-fortified position.
Lee now orders a massive assault upon the Union center. General George Pickett leads the only fresh division in Lee's army.
Oh, I've heard this. This is Pickett's charge, isn't it? I think I've heard of this.
And he forms the core of the attack under Longstreet's command. Meade is ready, having anticipated such a move the night before. He is the first Union Army commander to decisively outguess Robert E. Lee.
Oh. So Robert E. Lee presumably had like a whole string of victories before this point. He's like a very celebrated commander. But obviously the Union ends up winning. And the Union had its own very famous generals like sort of Sherman.
At 1 p.m., Lee bombards the Union defenses, hoping to soften them up. Meade responds, and together they create the largest artillery barrage in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow.
Ultimately, Lee's bombardment fails.
Imagine sitting through that.
Nevertheless, Pickett's attack commences at 3 p.m. 12,000 men emerge from Seminary Ridge. They must cross 1 mile of open ground.
Ooh.
Union artillery opens at long range and tears gaps in the Confederate line. Meade orders more than 20,000 reinforcements to converge upon the center. Ohio, New York, and Vermont troops position themselves upon the flank of the Confederate advance.
So basically, the Confederates are launching like an aggressive attack into like a really heavily fortified position, but not just fortified, a position where Union has a ton of troops. I mean, it's incredibly brave, but I mean, was that a wise thing to do? I don't know.
The Confederates are moving into a great pincer of Yankees.
Yeah.
The Southerners enter rifle range. And fewer than half cross the Emmitsburg Road. But with second and third line troops coming up, some manage to breach the Union position. A ferocious melee ensues.
So that would be like bayonet fighting, I presume, which I'm sure is just utterly brutal.
As tens of thousands of Union reinforcements arrive, the Confederate attackers dwindle. Lee's men don't stand a chance.
Oh, so what was the logic behind that attack then? Like, I mean, any kind of like military experts. I mean, what was it? Just like a huge mistake or a huge gamble? Because it seems that they charged a very well defended Union position, where the Union also had a huge number of troops, and were just shot down in Pickett's charge. Is that fair? Please comment below if I'm missing something.
Those who cross the stone wall are either killed or captured.
Yeah.
Lee's great moment of opportunity has become his greatest defeat by far.
Oh.
Scarcely half of the men who made the attack returned to Seminary Ridge.
I mean, that's crazy casualty. I mean, I'm sure some were taken prisoner, and perhaps some wounded, but that's. I mean, I imagine having like 500 guys and someone at the front being 250 of you, 250 of you are not coming back. You would, oh, I'd run away. But I guess I'd probably be shot if I ran away, but I'd want to run away.
As events unfold in the center, cavalrymen are active on the flanks.
Okay.
In hopes of threatening the Union rear, Confederate General Jeb Stuart's horsemen try to swing around the Union Army. They are stopped east of Gettysburg by Union cavalrymen under General David M. Gregg.
Ah.
General George Custer leads a charge of Michigan.
So this is Custer. This is the guy. I'm assuming is the same guy. Like again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is presumably the guy who lost the Battle of the Little Bighorn against the Dakota or the Sioux. I say I'm not 100% sure, but like, what's the chances there are two Custers in this time period? And also he kind of looks like the same guy, so I'm pretty sure it is.
That highlights the repulse. South of Gettysburg, Union cavalry hit the Confederate flank and rear with no success. Charge and countercharge produced no real result for either side. The Battle of Gettysburg is over.
That's interesting. It seems that it wasn't just a complete rout of the Confederate army. It wasn't like they were shattered and fled the field, as is often the case in a battle. I mean, clearly this was a Union win. The Union troops held their position, and I think probably inflicted a lot more casualties than they suffered. But it wasn't like a shattering defeat where the Confederates just sort of broken or ran away. It was more managed than that.
Lee has lost, but remains on the field.
Yeah.
He hopes to repulse a counterattack on July 4th to even the odds. Meade does not take the bait.
Smart.
That night.
Also, that dude didn't half look like Abraham Lincoln. Let's go back. Where is he? Not him.
Meade
Yeah, him. Didn't half look.
Take the bait.
So Abraham, it's like Abraham Lincoln's great grandson or something.
Through the mountains to the Potomac River. His lumbering wagon train of wounded is miles long. Meade plans to attack, but Lee's river position is too strong. The Army of Northern Virginia, beaten as it had never been beaten before, moves back into Virginia. And the war will go on another 21 months.
So I'd like to know more about the big picture around this battle. So by the sound of things, well, clearly it was a Confederate invasion of the Union. And I presume they were going for DC, but I don't know. I'd be interested to know that. What was their tactic? I mean, at the beginning they said that they were trying to sort of foster a peace movement. So, I mean, I guess the Confederates didn't actually have to conquer the North. They just had to survive. So we're kind of interested to know exactly what the Confederate strategy was.
In the battle's wake, Gettysburg is a place of horror.
I mean, like these pictures really bring it home. So you sort of obviously the pre-photography age. It's like the Battle of Agincourt or something. I mean, we know it was horrendous and very, very brutal, but you haven't got the photos to kind of show us and to make us realise just how similar we are to the people who took part in it, which of course you have for the American Civil War, which really makes it hit home.
Soldiers outnumber citizens by more than 12 to 1. Every home, church, and farm becomes a hospital. Most of the dead are buried near where they fell. Some are tossed into rocky chasms. Others lay exposed to the elements. Local citizens thought that Union soldiers should be buried in some organized fashion on the battlefield they had won.
For sure.
Thus, the first national cemetery on a battlefield was born. 3,512 Union soldiers are moved from their battlefield graves to the new Soldiers' National Cemetery. As the work progresses, organizers hold a dedication ceremony on November 19th, 1863.
Oh. So I'm assuming this is somewhere it's like still there today, because I've been to Arlington, which is in Virginia. I'm assuming this is a sort of similar idea.
15,000 people attend. Edward Everett is the main speaker. President Abraham Lincoln delivers a few appropriate remarks.
The only verified image of Lincoln at Gettysburg. Wow. And it really does look like the reenactor. I swear to God they're the same person. Or at least like blood relatives. That's an incredible... I mean, when I say incredible photograph, the quality of photography is not incredible. But what it shows is amazing. What a moment in history to capture.
The Gettysburg Address. In 2 minutes, Lincoln covers the history of the Republic, the raging war, the need to continue the fight.
And this is an important point. So, obviously, the American Revolution happened, less than 100 years after the United States actually became a country. So it was still a very young country. And this could quite easily have been, the end of the Americas as we know it. I mean, it could sort of fragment into 2 or even more pieces. And that it didn't is very impressive.
And lays out a vision for the future. It stands among the greatest speeches in American history.
For sure. And keeping it short is good as well. I mean, like you listen to some politicians in Congress or the House of Commons, they don't half go on. Keep it to 200 words. That's what you need, mate.
His words give increased purpose to the loss of life in evidence. A sacrifice that would be necessary in ever greater numbers, in hundreds of hallowed places yet unnamed.
Yeah.
With the hope that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
No, I'm glad they got like an African American soldier. Because my understanding, I don't know a huge amount, but I believe there are African American regiments that fought very bravely. That's definitely something I'd like to know more about. Well, that was fascinating. It makes me so glad I didn't take part. It sounds horrendous. I mean, 3 days of brutal fighting. I mean, Pickett's charge just sounded almost suicidal. But yeah, I say that was... I've learned a huge amount. I'd definitely like to do more on the American Civil War, actually. So if you've got any videos you'd like to recommend on the American Civil War, please do put them in the comments and I will see what I can do. But I say, once again, a huge thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, like, all that usual YouTube stuff. And I hope you have a great day.